the trials and the tribulations that she had to go through in order to get here to America and to build a life for yourself, your sister, and your brother as well. And then your father, not just a drug dealer, he wasn't selling dime bags on the corner. You know what I'm saying? Like he was
Mm-hmm.
that dude.
Yeah.
So from these two people, you're a product of these two people, and not everything that they did was great, but you're a product of these two people. What strengths in yourself did you take from each of those individuals?
From my mother, I am an eternal optimist because of my mother.
Live from the streets of Washington, D.C., on the corner where sports and culture meets hip-hop. Sharing stories of the DMV and spitting fire for the whole damn country. This is First and Told with Chad Ricardo and Darrell Bucknight.
What up, my people, and welcome back to First and Told, the podcast that intersects sports, hip-hop, entertainment, culture, and just about everything else. I'm Chad Ricardo. That's the man with the plan, Mr. Darrell Bucknight D. It's been a while, brother. It is very, very, very happy and fortunate for us to be back with the people.
It has been a while, and this is an awesome time of year to bring this back, to get back on our regular grind of sports, of high school athletics, of professional sports, and just talking, interviewing folks like we'll do later on in this show. We have an amazing guest coming up, and look, we're back at it, and see you to be here and chop it up with you and talk about stuff that's relevant and stuff that's irrelevant as the New York Giants. It's awesome. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, our guest today, truly special. We say that about everyone, but her name is Felicia Heath. She is an anesthesiologist. She is a leader in the hospital field. She is one of my best friends in the whole entire world. And she is a new author as her memoir, Spirit of a Hummingbird, Life on the Run. Is that correct, D? Did I get that right?
Childhood on the Run.
Memories of
a childhood on the run.
On the Run. That's going to be in stores. The link will be live on September the 13th, no matter when it is that you're watching this. You can check that out on Amazon. And after you hear our interview with Felicia Heath, I am certain that you will. A couple of things that have been going on in our lives since the last time that we were with you. D, you weren't married the last time that we got together, were you?
I was not married the last time that
you were engaged. Now
I was engaged. Now I'm married. So it's been just over 2 months.
Now you got better Wi-Fi. I think your credit score went up some.
Skin is better. The
skin is better.
Everything's better.
Yeah, you're not wearing a do-rag today. It's pretty awesome.
No, I'm not wearing it, but I have it right here. I had to take it off with still have it, of course. But no, I was not married the last time we recorded, but as of July 2nd of this year, I am married. Myself and my wife, Maggie, had an amazing wedding that you were a part of, that you came up to witness, that you had a major role in, something called a best man, I believe that's what it is. We had a great time. We had a great honeymoon in Greece for 2 weeks, and it's been these past 2 months have flown by, but it's been a really great, amazing, and amazing 2 months full of blessings and happiness. So, that was my summer. How was your summer?
But before we move on, I do want to say congratulations to you on being married. It's a very, very special moment in life. So congrats to you, Darrell, and to Maggie. I am so sorry that now you have to live the rest of your life with this guy here. It's pretty unfortunate for Maggie. Great for you, bad for Maggie. That's how that kind of wraps around. Look, for me, life has been a blessing. Today, as of September the 12th, I actually announced that I just signed a deal to be a contributor with Fox 5 here in Washington, D.C. Want to give a shout out to the leadership out there. My main man Paul McGonigal, his vision in bringing me on. This is something that's meant a ton to me, and just an opportunity to continue to share my passions on a larger platform. So I'm very, very excited about that as well.
And congratulations to you, Chad. This is something that's been in the works for a while. We've obviously seen your appearances and your guest spots on Fox 5 over the past several months, and we've loved it from not only the DC area but from states around the DMV. So this is a job well earned, and you deserve it. And we are excited to see you in your new role as a contributor at Fox 5. This is the channel of DC, live at 5 on Fox 5.
There
that's what the kids in DC love to say. So we're really happy for you. I'm really happy for you, and can't wait to see you on one of the DMV's most renowned and most watched stations. So
100%.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you for that, my brother. I think that the people listening right now, like, that's enough about you guys. Let's talk about sports. Boom.
Yeah.
Here we go. One of the largest stories of the last month or so is, of course, Serena the GOAT Williams. She first announced that she was going to be in her career adieu, and then went out in the U.S. Open and thrilled and wowed us once, twice more before gracefully bowing out. But of course, this is about so much more than just the U.S. Open, although that was dynamic. It's about her career and what she meant to the sport and to many lives of people who look like her.
She meant a lot to the sport and, again, to tennis and beyond. There were so many people that I talked to this year who had never really watched tennis before and didn't really have any interest in it. Specifically up until maybe a month or so ago when Serena did announce that she would not necessarily retire, even though that's what it seems it's going to be, but transition away from the sport of tennis to this new life that she's beginning. And speaking with someone the other day, someone who has great knowledge of the sport and great knowledge of Serena and her personal life, she thinks that Serena's life away from tennis will be even bigger than her tennis career, which is something that it seems so hard to do, but it's also such a compliment because you have to acknowledge just how great she was for so many years as a competitor, as an athlete, as a tennis player, and as many people regard her as the greatest tennis player of all time and one of the greatest athletes of all time. So as sad as it is to see her move away from what we've come to know her as an amazing tennis player, it is exciting to see what this next chapter in her life will bring.
Look, I look at the Williams sisters because, and Serena said this, that there would be no Serena if there was no Venus, and they're truly both in all logical perspectives and on the tennis court, there would be neither of them if there wasn't a Richard Williams and his lovely ex-wife who helped to bring them into the world. But what I want to touch on is, there will always be a connection between Serena and Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods really opened up that path for blacks and introduced us to the golf world. And then before Serena in tennis, there was an Arthur Ashe, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing about the Williams sisters that made them so unique to the culture is that they were, by all standards, unapologetically black. Mm-hmm. And when you looked at an Arthur Ashe, especially early on in his career, Arthur Ashe did all that he could to fit in with the status quo. And that's not a knock on him. He had to, in order to be where he was. He had to do that to fit in order to get there. Tiger Woods was always someone who wanted to appear as more of a universal spectrum than he did want to be acknowledged as a black man. The Williams sisters from day one, again, shout out to Richard, were, we are black. We are from Compton. And so you and you who look like us and maybe come from a similar background of meager upbringings, you can get here as well. This is not just for the elite. you can get here too. And the fact that they did that, I think that opened up doors for me, for you, for all sorts of other people beyond just in tennis, but in life. And I'm forever thankful to them for that.
I agree. And it's something that will be remembered from when they first came into tennis to this point now in 2022 with Serena transitioning away from the sport and Venus still being involved in tennis, but their prowess and their prominence in the sport will transcend forever for decades to come down the line.
Speaking of one of the most natural segues ever created, we got to speak now about Frances Tiafoe in the same U.S. Open in which Serena maybe calls it quits. Perhaps a star is born. A man by the name of Frances Tiafoe from right here in the DMV, close to where you grew up at, D. What was it like watching Frances go on this run?
Hyattsville, Maryland, the product of Hyattsville. I actually lived in Hyattsville for the first 6 years of my life, before I moved to D.C. So
you look like Frances Tiafoe today.
Do I?
Yeah.
How?
I'll look it up. I'll put a picture of you side by side. That's what I do.
It was really cool to see the people who came out to see Frances Tiafoe. Bradley Beal. First of all, he's a huge Washington sports fan. He's a huge Wizards fan. He's a big fan of Kevin Durant, from what I understand, but he's a big Washington Wizards fan. And to have Bradley Beal come up to Queens, to New York, to watch the U.S. Open, to sit courtside and see a fellow DMV star put on a show, quite frankly, for everybody, for him to advance as far as he advanced, for him to be as humble as he is. We know we talk about his beginnings. We talk about how hard his father worked and how his family had to live at the tennis center in PG County, I believe not far from the University of Maryland, how they had to live and sleep in an office there for so long. And for him to get to this point now and to see how much he's done and how he's put his name at the forefront and how much more he can do going forward, it's awesome. And it makes it even better that he's a product of the DMV, and the future is so bright for Frances Tiafoe, for his family, for his career. And it's just going to be so fun to watch him for years to come.
I think that's outstanding. That might be a theme of this episode of First and Told is the acknowledgement that it doesn't matter where you come from, that you can accomplish whatever it is if you're willing to work hard enough. I want to go ahead and transition to some of the things that are going on in the professional sports world right now. The Washington Commanders here in the DC DMV area. Unfortunately, you all advanced to 1-0 as of yesterday after winning your first game. I was really hoping that you all would lose to the Jags. You didn't. What did you think of your team thus far?
Well, you know what? Coming into the game, I said that this was going to be a prove-it game for both of those quarterbacks, for Trevor Lawrence and for Carson Wentz.
What a horrible interception Trevor Lawrence threw to seal the game for you all. I know that this is supposed to be your time to talk, but he could have led a drive to break you all's heart. Trevor, throw the ball away. Why would you throw that pass?
He forced it. It was a bad throw. I think he didn't have anybody in the area except for three Washington defenders, and was ultimately picked off by Derek Forrest. Yeah. But to me, it was a prove-it game for both of these quarterbacks. But with the Commanders, especially Carson Wentz, it was a game of redemption. We know that when he was in Indy last year, he had to beat the Jaguars, the very Jaguars the Commanders played on Sunday, to get into the playoffs. He did not, and that ultimately led to the team getting rid of him and us in Washington signing him. So it was the Carson Wentz roller coaster started already.
Okay. I thought that you were saying that he redeemed himself. I was going to say, D, I've got exhibits A, B, and C to show you that Jacksonville allowed you all to win that game. Go ahead.
I'm sure you do, and I'm sure you're ready to roll him as soon as the segment is over. But the roller coaster has begun because he threw back-to-back interceptions, one to number one overall pick Trayvon Walker, a defensive lineman who made a very athletic play to snag that. It was an amazing play. And those are some of the worries and concerns that Carson Wentz brings with him with whatever team he's a part of. We saw it in Philly. We saw it last year in Indy, even though statistically he was great, 27 touchdowns to 7 picks on the season. There were still questions and worries about his inaccuracies, some of which were on display Sunday against Jacksonville, but you also saw his strengths and his touchdown passes. He was able to get the deep ball over the top to Terry McLaurin, something Washington has missed ever since maybe Kirk Cousins was quarterbacking for them several years ago. So it's the wild roller coaster ride of Carson Wentz can get you here, but Carson Wentz can bring you down here as well. And understanding how to even those out and hopefully get successful quarterback play consistently is what these fans are looking for. So we'll see where he takes us.
So we're shooting this on a Monday, September the 12th. Again, this is following week 1 where the Commanders are 1-0. It's overreaction Monday, D. What are your thoughts on your team right now?
I have some concerns, naturally, as any fan will. I still have some concerns about our defense. I have concerns about linebackers and play with the linebackers. I think we were a little thin there up until last week when we signed a couple people, got John Bostic back as a free agent. We're a little thin in our secondary with Cameron Curl not playing against Jacksonville with a hand injury. Still some communication issues I feel on the defensive backfield that really plagued us against the Jaguars. But on the flip side of it, aside from the 2 Carson Wentz interceptions, I think the offense looked really dynamic. A healthy Curtis Samuel can take this team to a place it hasn't been in a while. They utilized him as if he was Deebo Samuel in San Francisco, bringing him out of the slot on reverses, in the wildcat, in the backfield as a running back. He's listed as a wide receiver, but can do so much for this offense. I think the Commanders have one of the most underrated receiving corps in the NFL, with Terry McLaurin, obviously, with Curtis Samuel, and with this impressive rookie, Jahan Dotson, who caught 2 touchdowns yesterday, and he will destroy your New York Football Giants when the time comes. That's what I want to end on. I'm hopeful. I'm cautiously optimistic, but we're in for the roller coaster.
My Giants beat the Titans yesterday. Now Dallas Dak is out with a thumb injury. I'm telling the world there's a really good chance that a not great team, we might be slightly above average, that there's a great chance we're going to end up 4-0 in a month and headed to the playoffs, not because we're really good, but because we did what needed to be done to get it done. But we can't really, or it would be unfair of us to leave our talk about the Commanders without touching on Brian Robinson. Brian Robinson Jr., the running back that you all drafted this year coming out of Alabama. He looked terrific during training camp. He was actually slated to be you all starting running back this year. He, of course, was a victim of gun violence. He was shot in the streets of Washington, D.C. in broad daylight on a Sunday just a couple of weeks ago. When I first heard it, I was so happy that this young man still has his life, yet so saddened by the state of what's going on in our streets here in the community.
I was too, and I heard about it, and I think the news broke on a Sunday or Saturday or something, and I went to sleep that night just thinking about Brian and his health, and obviously one of the first thoughts in my mind was Sean Taylor, and Sean Taylor was November will be 15 years. November 1st, I believe, will be 15 years since Sean Taylor was also a member of Washington and was shot and killed at his home in Florida. I think there's so much. I was reading an article by Kevin Blackstone in the Washington Post, and it was entitled Brian Robinson Will Be Okay, but we have to remember those who are not or who will not, because this is more than just a physical thing that Brian Robinson experienced or the victims of violence in the DMV experience. There's also a mental toll to it as well. There is a psychological thing that is experienced that nobody talks about. And I think so many people talk about and acknowledge, as they should, the victims who lose their lives to senseless acts such as this one, who are no longer here to see their friends or their families, who were taken too soon from us. But we fail to remember the people like Brian Robinson who survived, or the people like other victims who survived these acts, or who are victims of robberies, carjackings, of assaults that just plague our community. And I think it's unfortunate that we push those to the side and we look at numbers and say, oh yeah, violent crime is going down, there aren't as many murders, there aren't as many killings and this, that, and the other. But we fail to recognize that there are so many people who are suffering and that they've been essentially thrown to the wayside.
Sure.
So this community is it's a struggling community. It's a community I'm from. It's a beautiful community. And I think that's something that we need to get back to.
Yeah.
Being a community of culture, being a community of love and peace, and being what makes DC and Maryland and parts of Virginia great. And I look at people that we've talked to and that we've interviewed. Steve Turner at Gonzaga, Mike Hunter at Friendship Collegiate, Coach Harris at Carroll, guys who are in these communities who want to help these young men, these young people in general, but especially the young men who have been affected by so many of the things that we hear about on the news or on social media or online every day. And it shouldn't take a Brian Robinson situation for this to be brought to light. Yeah. It needs to be combated now. It needs to be prevented now. As a lot of things start with leadership, it starts with the mayors and with the politicians, the mayor of DC, with the politicians in the city, but also people like us, like you and I, people at home, people who are parents, to step up and to help these kids who are in our communities as much as we possibly can.
100%. And, just kind of to piggyback off of the point that you were making, Brian Robinson will be okay. There was a student athlete of Roosevelt who last week on Wednesday, I believe, was shot and killed in Washington, D.C. So we do. Our community, we got to do better. We got to be better. And we need our leaders out there in the streets to help make that possible.
For sure. Definitely.
Want to go ahead and keep it here local. Of course, at the collegiate level, the Maryland Terps are looking outstanding, as they often do to begin the season. But I know that this past weekend, Tua's little brother, Tagovailoa, had almost a perfect game. He threw 5 touchdown passes, only had about 4 incompletions. They were playing Charlotte, but that's okay. It was an outstanding game. They're 2-0. Any thoughts on them, D?
You said it at the beginning half of what you just presented. They start off well. It's about continuing things into the season. They can easily start every year 3-0, 4-0, but it's just all about finishing.
Yeah.
So they're in a tough conference.
Yeah.
They play big time programs. So we'll see what happens. Whether they're competitive, whether they can carry some of this momentum into their more tougher games against ranked opponents as the season carries on.
Yeah, college football is all about recruiting, and for the Maryland Terps, first of all, I love Coach Mike Locksley. I believe in what it is that he's building. I mean, putting together this high-powered offense is very attractive to recruits, and also those that are in the transfer portal who really, on the offensive side of the ball, who want to come in and put up numbers. University of Maryland is a great place to get that done. But here's the key, D. Now, again, Ohio State, University of Michigan, probably not going to happen. Probably not going to happen this year. But
probably not.
All the Terps need to do is beat Penn State again. Knock off Penn State. They beat Penn State during the COVID year. I think it kind of went under the radar and people didn't really notice. And then Penn State came back last year and avenged that loss. But beat Penn State, and then you can begin to keep some more of these 4- and 5-star recruits here at home and keep them from going up to Happy Valley. When Ohio State and Michigan comes calling, okay, just forget about it. But keep kids away from Penn State, and Coach Loxley can build exactly what it is that he and his staff are looking to do out there. Speaking of which, and this is another natural segue, D, that leads us to high school football, and we'd be here all day if we were going to talk about everybody in the DMV, and I love that, but we can at least speak to the WCAC, your Eagles, flying high on Ice Street, just like the Turks, 3-0 already.
They are 3-0. They're 3-0, and I think this is something that you brought up a few weeks ago when you were there at Gonzaga doing your preseason tour. What they may lack in five-star talent, they make up for in their attitudes, in the way they approach the game. And obviously it starts at the top with Coach Randy Trivers. He preaches what I believe, is the 3 T's. It's toughness, togetherness, and trust. That's one of them. Neff, now embrace finish. There's so many things that, to Coach Trivers and the Gonzaga program as a whole, are so mental. And if you can accomplish the fighting for your brother, the picking up your teammate when they're tired, that is more of a catalyst than making a big play, than making, something that looks spectacular on the field. It all starts beforehand, and it all starts with the mental aspect of things. You're right. They're 3-0 so far. They've done a great job. They've had several wins to start the season, but now it gets tougher. Now they have a couple more games against big-time opponents. They have Spalding coming up. They have St. Joe's Prep coming up. Both of those, I believe, are home games. And then you get into the heart of the WCAC schedule with the St. John's and the DeMathas and the Good Counsels and the McNamaras. So it's go time for the Eagles, but these 3 wins were building blocks for sure.
Yeah, no, and I am such a huge fan of the Gonzaga program, and all other WCAC coaches right now watching this saying, "Oh yeah, Chad, no big surprise." But I am a fan of the program. I love what they do. I love the way that they do what they do. So I'm happy for Coach Trivers. One of the things that's very interesting is the differences in philosophy. Again, Gonzaga does not, and this is no disrespect to these young men, but they don't have the most talented young men. Not they may have 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, but they don't have 10, 15, 20, 30 like some of the other WCAC schools have. And Coach Steve Turner talked about this in terms of basketball as well, and having to be able to really coach up and coach culture and whatnot at the programs. But Gonzaga chooses to kind of ramp up their schedule in order to get there with some opponents, and they knock them off. They get better as they go. The other WCAC schools are running the gauntlet right now.
Right away.
To lose those games in order to sharpen themselves for later on in WCAC conference play. Each of the other major 3 are all 2-1. DeMatha 2-1. They lost down in Florida to a big-time school. St. John's 2-1. Same thing down in Florida. And Good Counsel were undefeated. They just lost to a team up in Ohio, a very tough team this past weekend. But all 3 of those squads, D, they all look outstanding as well.
They do, and I'm glad you mentioned Good Counsel because they lost to, I believe they're the number 1 team in Ohio. Yeah. I believe it's Moeller, the high school. Mm-hmm. And that was a game. It was 39-31. And they fought hard, but it's a building block. Yeah. So this is, again, they're hitting it. They're doing all this right now, and it's going to be beneficial for all these big time major programs to accomplish this and get their feet wet as the season goes on.
Yeah, and look, I'm getting word that Felicia Heath, author of Spirit of a Hummingbird, Memories of a Childhood on a Run, she's in our on deck circle. She's ready to go, but I just want to give you my take of these other 3 things real quick. I've already said Good Counsel is going to be in the WCAC championship game. You co-signed that. I'll tell you why. Good Counsel, we know that by the time they get to WCAC play, that defense is going to be swarming. Right now, the defense is giving up points. They're playing really good teams, but that defense is going to be swarming. Good Counsel has an offense this year, though, bro. Frankie Weaver, the quarterback, is special. He's just a junior. Dylan Jones, the running back, is special. He's just a junior. They got 2 more running backs. Shout out to my main man, Kamari. They've got wide receivers all over the board. And again, on that defensive side of the ball, whether you're talking about Neo Avery, you're talking about Mr. Gooden, you're talking about Aaron Childs, a future 5-star in the middle, Good Counsel will be there. St. John's has future pros at every level of the defensive side of the ball. they're going to be in the conversation as well. And on offense, I love that quarterback. He's going to grow into his own. And then DeMatha, the last 2 games, DeMatha has given up, I believe, shutouts in the last 2, only 11 in the first game that they played. As young Denzel Gardner grows up and grows into his role as that quarterback, the Stags are going to be mighty. They've got a 2-headed running back tandem back there as well. The WCAC is going to be outstanding this year, D. I cannot wait until we get into those games.
I agree, and it's going to be so fun, especially come playoff time, because everybody's records is 0-0. You start the brand new season to get to that WCAC crown.
That is what's up. Well, that's enough of our local sports talk. Felicia Heath, she's on deck. This is First and Told.
First and Told, bruh.
And we're back. It is now time for our favorite part of the show. This is when we have an opportunity to sit down with a very special guest. And today, Darrell, we got a very special guest in the building. She is my dear friend. But before I talk about her, you tell us who she is.
We have a very special guest, Chad. Thank you for setting the scene, setting the stage for us. And we are joined on this fresh and welcome back episode of the First and Told podcast by the wonderful Miss Felicia Heath. Felicia is a friend of our shows, a friend of Chad, and she is a triple board certified critical care anesthesiologist. She's a blogger. She's a wife, a mother of 4, including a brand new, is it a 3-month-old that you have?
Yes.
Just turned
3 months.
Just turned 3 months. And aside from all the amazing things I just mentioned, Felicia is also the author. She's a debut author of a new book set to debut, I believe, tomorrow after the recording of this podcast. It is entitled Spirit of a Hummingbird, set to release September 13th. That book was written in a studio in the heart of Philadelphia, I believe, and it's a memoir, Memories from a Childhood on the Run. She wrote this book 72 hours after delivering her 3rd child. This left her husband with their 2-year-old, 1-year-old, and newborn as she drank Pinot Noir and wrote for days on end. And this is according to her, not to me. All of it was his idea, which is exactly why she tattooed his name across her shoulder and eloped with him on a South African safari 6 years ago. So, Felicia, we are so happy to have you. We are so happy to have you on our show, and we're gonna have fun, and we're gonna let our audience get to know you. So, welcome.
Goodness. I mean, listening to that biography there, Fee, I'm just thankful that you are still my friend after all of the things that you've done. All right. So, look, we're going to get to your book in just a moment here, but we like to lighten things up because we consider our show to be at the intersection of sports, all things entertainment, as well as hip-hop and music. So, Fee, right now on the spot, I need you to give me your top 5 musical artists of all time.
Nicki Minaj, Lauryn Hill, Jay-Z, Eminem.
Of it.
The 5th one. I'm gonna say T.I.
Whoa, really?
Oh,
I love it.
Okay.
I love it. Yeah.
ATL.
See, Darrell doesn't know much about that kind of music. He wasn't born yet when we were jamming out to most of those guys. So, you know.
I will say I did see Lauryn Hill in concert a few years ago, and she is also one of my top 5 favorite artists of all time. So, Chad, take what he said and just
what time did she arrive for your show?
Oh, about 5.5 hours late. But we still saw her.
Fee, look, I want to get back to the person that you are and how it is that all of this that you've become, where it all started. You talk about all of your accomplishments. I mean, you're triple board certified. I don't even know what that means, to be honest with you. Mother of 4, author, soon to be best-selling author, etc. Where did this drive come from? Intrinsically, where did you get this?
Intrinsically, I have this urge to accomplish so much more than I can ever imagine. And having kids actually has magnified that urgency to be someone and have an influence on this world for them as well. The drive also comes from, after writing the book, I realized that there's actually not much that I cannot endure and I cannot overcome. And everything feels very possible after writing the book and recognizing my strength and what I've, conquered in life. So that is the inherent drive. I mean, a lot of it is also to make my mother proud and feel like I'm leaving something worth remembering at the end of the day.
Yeah. Shout out Mama Lon, certainly one of my favorite people in the whole entire world. I want to take you back to your childhood now, and the great thing about it when we get all of this information is this stuff is also what your book is about. So as we're getting to know you, we're also given a kind of a peek under the cover of your book, which is again coming out on tomorrow. Back when you were, let's say, a teenager, right? Because I interview a ton of student athletes. We interview a ton of student athletes. And the special ones, the 5 stars, the elites of the elites, I asked them at what point did they realize that they were different? So for someone like you who has gone on to accomplish all of these things, etc., there had to have been a point in which you were sitting in a classroom or you were sitting somewhere else where you said, you know what? I'm operating at a different level than most of my peers are. Where was that point?
I would say that point was probably around middle school. So I did go through a lot of bullying as a younger child, and I used school as therapy to create a sense of stability in my life. And I realized that I didn't care what they thought or how they treated me or any of that. It didn't make me sad. It was just a nuance that came with going to school and accomplishing what I needed to do to heal and find peace and deal with what I was going through at home, which was much bigger than anyone could ever realize. So I think that's when I understood that I was on a different wavelength. Because
I think that we use, the word bullying, like it's a hashtag and it goes around so frequently right now. But I think that it is used so much that we kind of gloss over it. So when you say bullying, talk to me about that. What was that?
So bullying for me, and I mentioned some of this in the book, was a lot of racist and sometimes personal verbal attacks, unprovoked, in school and other people in order to embarrass me or hurt me or make me feel ashamed of something that I shouldn't be. So for an example, kids would come up to me and, make all these really silly noises mimicking what they believed was Chinese language. That kind of bullying, or saying that I was ugly, or asking me why I wore the same clothes every day, or pointing out scars, like unprovoked meanness that, only serve themselves for a laugh or an ignorant amount of attention from other kids.
So instead of fighting back physically, you turned to your education, you turned to the classroom, and you derived your strength from there.
Yes. I mean, so my entire upbringing was extremely dysfunctional and chaotic. And school brought me a sense of stability. So I was able to study, and math brought me this sense of resolution. Like I can figure something out and come to the same conclusion every single time if I do it right. And then reading and writing and delving into that helped me escape and live other stories. And I needed that. I needed that as a child. So I feel like there were days that I said, oh, you know, I'm a little scared to go to school today because of the bullying, or I didn't look forward to it. But there was a transition at some point where I said, none of that actually even matters because I've gone through so much. I need this. I need this to survive. And all of this bullying is nothing. And if they had even known what I was going through at home, they would realize that the bullying and the nonsense was nothing compared to what my real life was.
Wow.
You know, I don't want to give away too much in the book because I obviously want our viewers and people who listen to this show to go out and buy it and read it and understand your story. But I just, actually, as I was speaking just now, I made the mistake that I didn't want to make. I don't want to call it just a book. This is a memoir. This is a recollection of things that you experienced during childhood and a continuation of a lot, because part of this title is Spirit of a Hummingbird, but memories from a childhood on the run. So it's not just one set thing. It's like I said, a build up and a continuation of things. Some of those things that you experienced as a child and that you still had to go through when you left school and left all the bullying and left all the turmoil that you faced in the classroom or in the school building. What were some of those things that you did experience away from school, and why did you feel it was important to express those, not only just in your life, but in this memoir as well?
So some of the things that I experienced were domestic violence between my parents. I would say domestic violence between me and my extended family. Poverty. Just going through life with immigrant parents and being a first generation immigrant. So those were the things that I was going through outside of school and going home to. And it was important to talk about all of those things in order to relate to my reader. I wanted to give them the most authentic version of my life, and so that they could relate, so that they could somehow feel empowered themselves when they, step back and analyze what they go through on a day-to-day basis.
I do want to circle back to the memoir a little later, specifically about the title, Spirit of a Hummingbird, and how that came to fruition. But as a debut author, I do want to ask you about the process and how you decided that you wanted to write this book. I kind of mentioned it in the intro, but to hear more about why you decided to do this, but also how did you find the people to work with, the publishers, getting everything together in this process? If you wouldn't mind, take us through that and just let us into your mind and how.
So the inspiration for the book probably began a decade ago when I was a young adult and my self-perception started to evolve. Okay, I went from feeling like I don't want to tell people what I went through to I should be telling them what I went through because it's interesting, it's gritty, and it's a story worth sharing. And then when I decided to write the book, 100% after I interviewed my mom. I interviewed my mom hoping to gain some insight to what I was like as a child. And instead, I found so much strength in her struggles that I said I had to write our story, not just my story, our story. So that was what sparked the whole process. The process of writing included a lot of reading. So once I decided to write the book, I read incessantly. Audiobook, every memoir I could get my hands on. I did workshops. I wrote when I could. I dedicated a few hours a week to writing. I outlined. I made like a visual of what I wanted the book to be like. And then in my mind, I was really telling the story in my mind and just trying to figure out the best style to represent my story in the best way possible, to speak to my audience. Then when it came finally time to write it, I had to just sit in a studio in the heart of Philadelphia, like you said, and write it from beginning to end, because that was my opportunity. I had already had this idea in my mind. I just had to execute it. And I was lucky enough where, my husband and I both took family leave. So I sat there and I said, I cannot sacrifice this time with my family and leave this studio without a finished book. Okay, that is unacceptable. So that's what I did. And then when it came to the publishing and what route I would take, the most important thing to me was creative control. I wanted to approve of everything. This is my story, my book. I didn't want anyone else to own the rights. So that right off the bat eliminated traditional publishing companies, because they end up taking over all of the rights. And eventually, if I want to do something with the book on a bigger scale, I didn't want them to have the power to manipulate my story into anything else other than how I created it. So then after that, you have the option of either self-publishing or hybrid publishing. When you self-publish, you really have to understand the industry. I mean, I didn't really have time for that. My focus was writing the book and getting it out there, but I didn't have, the resources to find someone to design my cover or the format or create it into a Kindle or set me up to do an audiobook. So with hybrid publishing, they take a smaller percent than a traditional publishing house, but they give you all of the creative control, and you both invest into the project. So they have some skin in the game as well. So your success will also, be important to them. And they also help with marketing. These days, the traditional route, there is no marketing involved. They essentially say if you have a social media following, you can do all of that on your own. So I didn't really see any benefit to going with them, even if it was for, the prestige of it, because they would have creative control. They wouldn't really market for me, and they didn't have anything to lose if the book didn't do well.
No, I love that. And again, if you're just now joining us, Spirit of a Hummingbird dropping tomorrow. That's on September the 13th. No matter when it is that you're checking this out, we've got Felicia Heath joining us here on First and Told. I'm Chad Ricardo. That's Darrell Balknight. Fee, look, the book, again, you're my best friend, and I love you pieces. And I would have read your book one way or the other, bro. Like it could have been horrible, and I would have read every page of your book based on our personal relationship. Mm-hmm. But that's not the case in this book. Like this is a page turner. Like I was engulfed. I was entranced by the book. And one of the things is it is to your parents and to the lives that you led, because like you said, this is not just your story. This is your family's story. Your mother, the trials and the tribulations that she had to go through in order to get here to America and to build a life for yourself, your sister, and your brother as well. And then your father, not just a drug dealer. He wasn't selling dime bags on the corner. You know what I'm saying? Like he was that dude.
Yeah.
So from these two people, you're a product of these two people, and not everything that they did was great, but you're a product of these two people. What strengths in yourself did you take from each of those individuals?
From my mother, I am an eternal optimist because of my mother. When people say your attitude and your enthusiasm takes you so much farther than,
Yeah.
you could really imagine given your circumstances, that's because of the outlook she gave me. She was still able to laugh about some stuff through it all and be entertained by her children. And we would have these moments that we said we would be okay. And honestly, the entire universe was telling us that it would not be okay. And she believed that something better was coming. So that optimism has helped me thrive. And then from my father, it's funny because, when you're young and immature and you're resentful, you tend to think, all of my positive qualities had nothing to do with you. None of my successes, I did all of this without you.
Right. Yeah.
But really, he gave me two things that I can actually point out. One was he was a fearless, egotistical man. And
I see none of that in you, Felicia. None.
And this is twofold. And he told me I was beautiful all the time. So he told me I was the future Miss Chinatown, and he had this own ego of himself. And
this is while other kids at school were telling you how ugly
exactly.
You were.
So, and this is now me becoming an adult with high self-esteem. How did I become a woman with confidence and high self-esteem after going through all that? And I think partly it was because my dad instilled this unshakable idea that I was beautiful. And that's it. And you look like me, so that means you're beautiful. And it's a fact. And in this day and age where social media and image and all of these things make you feel inferior, like I don't feel any sense of that. And I do think it's because of my dad.
Yeah. When you look at, for myself as a 40-year-old man, when you get to be of a certain age, and Darrell's not there yet, but when you get to be of a certain age, you truly do begin to look back and to understand how all of these relationships, how all of these circumstances and instances, how they do and how they have made us the people that we are today. And sometimes we go back and we thank people that we hadn't thanked before we have those conversations. I'm interested to know what conversations or how did the relationship with your mother blossom as you took in the totality of everything that's found in the book?
It opened up conversation. So my mother didn't really share anything about herself to us. A part of that was for our own protection, I think. And she didn't want us to see what she went through or was going through, so that we could continue to have a positive outlook on life. So it did open up a conversation that we would otherwise never have had. And the other thing that it helped me and us is appreciate the decisions that she made. So, on the surface, some of the decisions in the book and how she handled certain circumstances made you wonder, was this the best for you and your family? But when we talk about it, and I now understand what she went through, it was the only way to eventually get to the end of, this journey and survive, and for us to be okay later on in life.
Yeah, I do want to circle back to something I briefly mentioned earlier about the title of the book and Spirit of a Hummingbird, because it's so, to me at least, it's so thought-provoking, and it takes you to so many different places. How did you come up with that title, and what does it mean to you, but also what was your purpose in not only developing that title, Spirit of a Hummingbird, but getting it to resonate with readers and with the audience, and looking at the cover of the book?
So I didn't come up with the title of the book until after I wrote it. And I wanted something that provoked some sort of imagery, for my reader, some kind of artistic image for them. And that was one part of it. The other part was, there's a scene in the book where I am watching a hummingbird be painted, and there was something like very beautiful that gravitated me towards that bird. And then I later went on to research it, and it's a symbol of lightness and joy. And they represent, your capacity to combat negativity. And I feel like that was a recurrent theme in the memoir. I had to continually tap into my tenacity to handle this life on the run and not let it break my spirit. So that's how I ended up coming up with the title.
That's awesome. That's really, and when I first heard it and first thought about it, I immediately thought imagery, because you think of a bird, you think of a hummingbird, and so many thoughts and images come up in one's mind when they think of just animals in general, but especially birds, for many reasons you just explained. I do want to kind of end on this and ask you about the overall message of the book. You've talked about it a good amount throughout this interview, and what you experience and what you hope what you hope others get from this. But you touched on topics such as bullying, such as the experiences that you went through at home, in your personal life, in public with others that you didn't even know. And you just a few minutes ago touched on social media and how damaging and negative it can be, especially to today's youth. So all of that in a nutshell, what do you want your overall message from your memoir to be for those who read the book, or for those who may not read the book but just hear this interview? What do you want them to know?
I want my readers to feel inspired after reading it. I want them to recognize the power in their own story, because it exists and it's there, and allow anything difficult or challenging to uplift them rather than bring them down. You can take control of your thoughts and your perspective, and you should create your own happiness despite whatever you're going through. And I hope I can send that message, when the book is released.
Look, Felicia, Heath, we're going to get you out. You're very, very busy, and I promise you that we're going to let you get back to your life. But I got just a couple of more questions for you, just because they popped in my brain right now. Like, I read back through your memoir, and I'm going through your childhood again on the run, and later on, it's not even just you and your mother. Then your sister Amanda is born, and then your Brian is born as well. And you had a different responsibility then, right? Like, you kind of had to grow up before that which a typical young child would grow up. You had to take care of them, okay?
Yes.
Then I looked at you in college, which is when it was that we met, and you were always, even then, you were a leader amongst your friends. It was you that the people that were in your circle that they looked to be led through the way. And now you are a doctor and in positions of leadership within a hospital. So I say all of this to say that you have been this individual who has always taken care of and healed and served others. in some ways, are you going back to take care of the little girl who was on the run that we find in your memoir?
In some ways, I believe that is true. I think for a long time, I protected that girl in the memoir by not talking about any of this and not reliving it or delving into my memories or reflecting to protect that girl. It was a coping mechanism. By freeing her and allowing her to speak her truth, I think I'm healing her.
Yeah. And we'll get you out of here on this. As life has so presented itself, you are a mother of 4 children. 3 of those are girls. I know that you love your baby boy. I know that Maverick, that's your dude. You've got 3 girls yourself though as well. What do you teach them, and what things are the most important for you to arm your girls with as they come up in this world?
So all of us have a daily mantra, but it all began with my first daughter. So their mantra is, I'm strong, I'm fearless, I'm smart and beautiful, and nothing in this world can stop me. That is what they say every day on their way to daycare.
I love it.
Okay?
That's so great.
They have to believe that they are unstoppable, and anything they want to do, they can do. Not because they only believe in themselves, but because their mom blazed the trail and is showing them as well.
That's what's up.
I don't want my kids to have one inkling of doubt at all. And that's what I'm hopefully doing by being a leader and making a difference in medicine and sharing my story and so on and so forth. More to come.
That's what's up. That is
awesome.
The book, the memoir, Spirit of a Hummingbird. It is in store. Where can we get it, Fee? How do we purchase this book?
You can get it on Amazon. The link will be live tomorrow. You can also get it on Barnes & Noble online. And you can, if you call into any of your local bookstore and ask for it, they can order it directly as well.
That's what's up. That is... Felicia
Amazing.
Heath, you have been absolutely fantastic, not just today, but every moment of the 20 years that I've known you. Thank you very much for stopping.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And we are back, D. Felicia Heath, longtime friend of mine, 20 years, one of my best friends. It was an absolute joy for her to join us.
It was, and to hear her story and to know how much she's overcome and know how all of that empowered her and got her to where she is today. It was inspiring. And I don't know how anybody could listen to her interview or read her book and just not be inspired and not feel connected to their inner selves or their older selves and just persevere through many of the tough times as she explained. So I'm excited for people to hear this and to get the book. The memoir, I should say. The memoir.
The memoir. And the name of the memoir, Spirit of a Hummingbird, Memories of a Childhood on the Run, September the 13th. It will be available on Amazon. That is mother of 4, 3 times board certified, doctor, executive pro, future bestseller, Felicia Heath. She's got all of those things, a true 5-star. That's going to do it for us. D, thank you very much, bro. It was good to be back with you.
It was great. We're going to do it again, and football season is here. We're in the heart of so many sports, and we're going to do it again, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be a good year.
That's what's up. I hope the Commanders lose next weekend, and go Giants.
I hope the Giants lose next weekend and remember the Titans.
Ooh, good job.
Thank you.
That's it for us.
First and Told.